Okay, apropos my last talk, um, I've been asked to explain why I chose London yet again for a reincarnated life to live in. And quite frankly, London, apart if you have a comfortable middle class background, and is absolutely perfect with. Obviously, only two exceptions. First of all, the climate is absolutely ghastly, and secondly, but this is true of all cities, you do see poverty around you, which is terribly sad and terribly disturbing, and there's a high crime rate. But London has the most wonderful parks, the most fascinating architecture, superb theatres, superb concert halls. It's a capital city, which is more than New York is. Sorry? Oh yes, it has unmitigatingly absolutely excellent art galleries and free lectures that you could go to. Wonderful districts such as Hampstead, Primrose Hill, Belsize Park, Richmond, Chiswick, Greenwich, Blackheath, that you and Docklands that you can walk through. The river is a sheer delight to walk through, and very, very good schools, both state and independent. Enough decent state schools, if you look around carefully, that you can so you can save a lot of money and have a multicultural education as well. So, all in favour of London. Just compare it to the alternatives in some kind of reincarnated life. First of all, most beautiful of all cities, there is Paris, but that has, you'd have to speak French, but also it has a far more elite class system, and elite educational system than London has. Far, far, far fewer open spaces, very, very concentrated. Paris is a delightful place to visit and perfect warm sunny weather, but to live in could be rather oppressive. Then there is Rome, which is not a financial centre, but is a wonderful, fantastic tourist city, but has very, very little on the outskirts. It's very, very concentrated, very few parks, and a chaotic higher education system, to say the least, which is true of everywhere on the continent. Then, of course, we have Berlin, which has a freezing cold climate, is a terribly grey and grim city with very, very little in terms of architecture to lift the spirits. You have to go out to Potsdam to have beautiful architecture and really beautiful parks. It has the relics of the Cold War around you, which is interesting, but is sorry.
It's groovy.
Say that again.
It's groovy.
Well, people say that it's groovy, but I have been to the Oranienburger Strasse in the evenings in the summer, and there's very, very, very little street life. There's plenty of nightclubs in Berlin, so my more youthful friends tell me, where young men and women dance until the early hours, and, and then get expelled into a cold dawn to wander home. I've never seen any grooviness on the streets there. If you want grooviness on the streets and open nightlife, you're better off, frankly, in Paris or in Rome, or Barcelona. Then, of course, the only other alternative to live is New York. But New York is a very, very, very oppressive, intense city with dreadful climate. The social services are absolutely awful. There's no NHS there, and lots of extreme politics, and so I don't think I would want to live as an American. So I mean, there's also the alternative, I suppose, of living as an Australian, but they're in Sydney, and Sydney is that's a very attractive prospect, except that Sydney is in the absolute ends of the world, and there's absolutely nowhere to go to. As soon as you're just a few miles outside Sydney, there's complete and utter total desert, very little interesting countryside, and you can't even see the marsupials. You have to go to the zoo to see the marsupials.
Melbourne.
Well, Melbourne is completely dull and lacks. At least Sydney has the wonderful harbour and the wonderful bridge, and at least from the exterior, the wonderful opera house.
Beautiful buildings in Sydney.
Exact. Well,
In Melbourne.
I've not seen any beautiful. Well,
Confederation
I've never been there, but I look at the internet very for several hours to see these alternative places. I've not actually seen them.
San
Anyway,
Francisco?
sorry.
San Francisco?
Oh, San Francisco's always foggy, and you really don't need to bother with San Francisco now because their Trans-American Pyramid has been trumped by our wonderful Shard, and if you want trams going up steep highways, you're better off going to Lisbon. There's a great big suspension bridge in San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, but you can see that similar sort of thing in Lisbon and all over the place now. So.
Denver, Colorado?
Never heard of it. Except I have. It's near mountains. So I seriously think the best place, if you're comfortable and you're middle class, is to be born and brought up in London. And of course, there's excellent places of higher education, very, very near London, and it's so near Europe, so you can always go for a nice holiday in normal times without COVID and pandemics to Paris. Or it's good, or Rome, or Istanbul, or Prague, or Venice. So, anyway, then what did you?
I now want you to list the top cities in order.
Okay. So these are the top cities in order: Paris, Rome, Istanbul. These are largely entirely European cities. I have been obviously to plenty of cities such as New York and New Delhi and Tokyo and Hong Kong. But I'm not listing them in order, they're a totally different list. But European cities outside the UK, so it's not outside the UK, Edinburgh also features, but London doesn't feature. So Paris, Rome, Istanbul, Prague, Venice. I should actually, I suppose, talk about the criteria for why they're listed. The basic criteria for listing them is that they have beautiful and wonderful buildings, but also I take into account their history and their present-day importance economically and politically. So Paris, Rome, Istanbul, Prague, Venice, St. Petersburg, Edinburgh, Florence, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Vienna, Lisbon, Berlin, Turin, Budapest, Moscow, Kiev, Zurich, Toulouse, Stockholm, Madrid, though I should caveat with Madrid, if you consider Toledo, Segovia, Salamanca, the beautiful cities around it, Madrid will be easily in the top 10. Madrid, Krakow, Warsaw, Copenhagen, Naples, Seville, Antwerp, Brussels, Marseille and Milan. And then I have a list of much smaller cities, which are...
Which are the smaller cities?
Well, there's sort of cities which are not quite the smallest. Salamanca, Verona, Granada, Cordoba and Seville and Rouen. And then there is, though some of them are co-equal, and then there's the tiniest cities, which are and these once again, they're entirely outside the UK. Dubrovnik, Toledo, Salzburg, Siena, Bruges, Santiago, Segovia, Evora, Lucca, Carcassonne and Ohrid, which is in Macedonia. And I'm afraid I've only ever been to once, but have very nice memories of. So that's that.
Excellent.
So this will be now recorded for posterity.